Now you got to connect with your phones.
All right. Welcome. This is the School District of Prescott Board of Education regular meeting. We have been in closed session since 6:15. We are now on item 4, Pledge of Allegiance. Pat, would you care to lead us? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we're on item 5, recognition of visitors. Is there anybody in the audience that would care to be recognized? Okay, let's move on. Good news. Item 6.
Yes, there's a incredible amount of good news from around the district. I'll ask our administrative team to come up. May was a fast and furious month. You know that we're coming out of an early board meeting last week at the end of the school year, but between May and now, we've had graduations, we've had incredible events with our athletics and activities, musical, and also you can see all of our faces once again. So don't adjust your TVs or your YouTube channel. So Mr. Figge, you want to start?
Absolutely. And I'll keep this brief, but we have had a lot of great things and more great things happening tonight. The musical at the end of May, absolutely phenomenal, and a change of pace for maybe what we typically envision for a musical or a drama production. I would like to thank Brittany Camrath, Thomas Speltz, their entire team that they put together, the students that came up and put on a production, 4 different productions over the course of a weekend, so phenomenal job to them. Graduation at the end of the year, a lot of different people pulling that together and a phenomenal graduating class. The parents, the community members, family members who were there to support them. It was really fun to see a group of people come back together and celebrate something and get some normalcy back. Just a big celebration there. And then finally, summer school at the high school is off and running. And I know Mr. Kozmowski will talk some more about the programming there, but we've had quite a few staff members who have stepped up and are continuing roles over the summer. And so it's also fun to see a lot of students excited to extend their learning even into the first couple weeks of June here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Figge.
I'll also be brief here, but we do have some important things I think to celebrate here. Our girls track and field is D2 regional champs. They were at Bloomer on Monday night and came away as the regional champions. That's a huge accomplishment for them and everyone involved. We also had an abundance of athletes, both boys and girls, that will be advancing to sectionals, and that'll be in Osceola on Thursday. So that'll be tomorrow night, 3 o'clock start for there. So we're very excited about that. We almost had to get 2 buses to get everyone up there, so that's how well the team is doing. So a very exciting time. So kudos to everyone involved with that. Had some school records also fall on Monday night. Grace Carlson rebroke her own record in the 100 meters, and then in the 200 meter, Abby Severson. So 2 senior girls there breaking some records, pretty impressive stuff. Speaking of regional championships, our softball team just won theirs tonight. They hosted D3 regional championship. They beat Greenwood Loyal, so just came from that. So you could say our girls here, our programs in the spring have a plaque problem. I'm not talking about their teeth, but with winning the hardware. So awesome job. Our softball team now will host sectional semifinals on Monday night here in town. So best of luck to them. A couple of things there in terms of all conference and different with track. They have to win conference to be all conference, but we also had a numerous amount of our athletes in baseball and softball nominated and recognized for all conference. So for a school our size, smallest in the conference, to have the success that we've had here in the spring, 2 regional championships there, it speaks a lot of volumes to our athletes, our community, our coaches, everyone involved. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Matt. Mr. Igo, middle school.
Good evening, members of the board. I want to first talk a little bit about our 18 students that we presented the Presidential Award to at the last day of school. In order to receive the Presidential Award at the middle school, you must be in 8th grade, and you have to maintain a 3.667 GPA throughout all 3 of your middle school years. Along with that is you have to rank in the 85th percentile nationally or higher on our FastBridge assessments. So for our 18 students, and I'm not going to go through and read all 18 names, but for our 18 8th graders to put forth the effort and the work essentially for the past year and a quarter to still maintain their high academic achievements and to maintain everything else. We celebrated those 18 students in the last day of the year, so congratulations to them. And again, just to demonstrate again how hard our kiddos have been working. The other thing that I would like to say tonight is just to thank our staff and our parents especially, and our students for a fantastic end of the year celebration at Prescott Middle School. We took the last half of the day of the last day to celebrate the year that we've had, the break coming up, and we had a really, really nice time. We had beautiful weather, and so hopefully all of the kids enjoyed a little bit more of a relaxing end of the school year. Thank you.
Michael Kozmowski, Malone Intermediate.
Intermediate, similar to the middle school, we had a blast off to summer day, the last day of school. It went over really well. The kids really enjoyed the kickball tournament. Even though the third grade got rained out in the morning and they did it in the gymnasium, they just thought it was cool with the curtain pulled and they were kicking ground rule doubles. So it was a great day and a lot of excitement on our kids. Transition meetings this year at the elementary level, a little bit different than years past. On our last PD day, we had some time for our staff to come together and finalize kind of their thoughts on the year and do some reflection. And then in the fall, during our in-service week, is when we will actually host our transition meetings where we're face-to-face, which just gives us a little bit better timing because we'll now have our class lists and be able to talk about individual student needs as well. Want to recognize again and congratulate Deb Carlson on her retirement after 29 years of service to the district and community. Well done, Deb. And lastly with the board is we have our fourth grade opening, and I just want to say that we're in the throes of interviewing right now. We just got through really round 2 and we're looking at round 3, but we had 28 high quality candidates to choose from a vast variety of experiences and paths into education. And I'm looking forward to July to bringing you some names that you can approve.
Thanks, Michael. Sarah Dusick with Malone Elementary.
We had a great wrap up to the school year as well. Kindergarten and 5th grade hosted graduations, and it was well attended by families and grandparents and aunts and uncles, and the weather cooperated. There wasn't any rain and it wasn't that unbearable heat yet, so it was fun to celebrate the end of the year and wish them the luck on their transition to their next grade levels. This week is our first week of summer school, and at the elementary building we have former 4K students, future kindergarten students walking our hallways, and it's fun to have them out and about and getting to know the building and the staff around the hallways. And then teachers and students really worked hard to make sure that it was a special end of the school year. There were lots of walking field trips, lots of ice cream treats, lots of fun activities happening in the hallways. So it was just a great all-around school year, we feel.
Thanks, Sarah. I have 3 things I just wanted to touch on. The first is on the slides that you see behind me that are on the carousel. Wanted to thank the employees for their years of service. Because of COVID last year, we weren't able to identify our staff that have been with us 5 years in 5-year increments. So on the last day of school, we did have a luncheon and we celebrated our employees for the end of 2020 and of the year 2021. You can also see that we recognized our retirees. The speeches that were given were by our staff and administration were very heartfelt. It's always nice to acknowledge those milestones, and sometimes it wasn't a dry eye, but very talented speeches and poems were recited. Also, thank you to Mike for stopping by to be able to give a few words on behalf of the board to our staff. And so, as you can see, all those pictures that are coming by. We have also transitioned, you'll hear a little bit later, into our summer programming, and that'll be addressed later in the meeting. The last 2 pieces is that I just wanted to share that I was on 2 legal conferences today. The first was in relationship to referendum and construction contracts and some of the new things that we have to attend to, as well as when later today we'll give an update of our work session from earlier in the month of just the different levers that we'll put with regards to using our annual budget, using fund balance, using Fund 46, and then obviously some of the federal money, ESSER dollars. There are always different stipulations that we have to abide by, and so That was very helpful, that legal conference. In addition, there were some things that I'll be mentioning in our COVID update that we have to consider as we head into August. And then finally, I did want to thank the board and the administrative staff for helping to navigate this year. And I thought the end of the year resonated quite well from all the activities and events that went on. And I couldn't think of a better way to have closed out our academic year for 2021. Thank you.
All right, move on to school business. First item is the consent agenda. We have minutes, board checks, personnel, retirements, changes, hires, registration of non-licensed staff. Approve the IEA Incorporated to complete required AHERA inspections for facilities over the course of the upcoming 3 years, and approve of the IEA Incorporated to provide the required environmental health and safety management services for Prescott School District. Is there anything the board would like to remove from consent at this point? All right, I will adopt the consent agenda. Is there any objections? No objections, the consent agenda is adopted. We'll move on to item B, retirement, resignation, and employment of licensed staff.
At this time, there were no further retirements. We do have one fourth grade Malone Elementary teacher, Malia, is it Wilczek? Wilczek has resigned as of June 3rd.
Questions, board, comments? We'll take these separately, so if we can take a motion here.
I'll move to accept the resignation of Malia Wilczek, Malone fourth grade teacher, effective June 3rd, 2021.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That carries. Employment?
All right. We do have 3 hires. I'll go through all 3 of them, and then you can move on each individually. We 2 are at the high school. The first is we are recommending Rick Montreal for high school dean. In addition, we are recommending Andrew Caudill for the activities director. And then third, Megan Lisner for middle school ELA.
So we'll start with Rick Montreal. Board, is there any questions on this position here for the Dean of Students? Anybody have any questions or comments?
I just wanted to double check that it's the Dean of Students is not an administrative position. Is that correct?
It's a good question. So individually, we were going after one that didn't necessarily have the licensure, so it wasn't a requirement. Rick Montreal does have an admin license, so it did make him kind of a preferred candidate for us.
And when it comes like pay scale and all that kind of stuff, I mean, does that change anything with that? I know that's not.
Yeah, so right now it will be based on, he comes with a number of years of experience, and he's coming from a larger district, and so we'll have to be commensurate with his pay.
Okay, based on years of experience and teacher and stuff like that.
Exactly.
Okay. Yep. And then I guess I just had a question about process and committee and all that kind of stuff too. Do we have a lot of applicants? That kind of good stuff.
Josh, since the next 2 are yours, we can talk about the process and who we included.
And also if you could respond to why the choice was made.
Sure.
Thank you.
So we posted, I believe it was about a month and a half ago, almost 2 months ago, for both positions. The Dean of Students didn't require an administrative degree. Some of the tenets that we put in there would be helpful to have some of that leadership experience, although administration wouldn't necessarily be necessary. The activities director didn't have an administrative degree either. It could have been sports management, athletic coordinator. And so we got 23 different applicants for the activities director. We got 18 applicants for the Dean of Students, and some of those crossed over. So Mr. Montreal was a crossover candidate who interviewed for both positions. Mr. Caudill does not have an administrative degree. He has a sport management degree. So he was only interested in the activities director position. For the Dean of Students, we brought together a team of people. I did a screener for both positions beforehand and did phone calls and reference calls to kind of whittle down our applicant pool to viable candidates, I guess I would say, so we didn't maybe have any misfires. For our Dean of Students, we had representatives from special ed, counseling, our front office, because they work very closely, the dean works very closely, a regular teacher, and then Mr. Inouye also sat in on that as well. And so they did a 1-hour interview with us, and then we had a team of students that was selected from our junior class, since they'll be our senior leaders next year. And they developed their own set of questions for the candidates, and then they were also responsible for touring them around the building and kind of sneakily interviewing them along the way. And then they developed a rubric too that they were filling out based on how they felt about the candidates. We did something similar with the activities director. So we had multiple teams for that one. We had a team specifically of coaches and advisors from clubs that interviewed each candidate first for a half hour. We had a second group that was made up of Penny Peterson for community ed, Angela McGee from PCR, myself, and Kelly Radloff for kind of the front office. And we interviewed them. And then the third team was our same student group from our Dean of Students. And they had developed a separate set of questions for them. And then because some of our candidates were virtual candidates for the activities director, they did a sit down with those candidates, the candidates who came in, they toured them around to the school again, and then filled out their rubric and debriefed with the entire group afterwards and myself. Does that cover your questions? It's like I'm being interviewed right now. I forgot the question.
Yeah, I was just kind of wondering process and stuff, and sometimes we talk about, we're hiring in this spot because we have our Matt leaving us, and so we're hiring, and when we looked at those, it sounds like the recommendation was, it's like a huge job to be the activities director and kind of that dean of students at a high school by yourself. And my understanding is that those hours were huge, and like we can't, we want to keep our staff and make sure that we're taking care of our staff. And so as a conversation, it was, let's look at these two different positions. And I just want to make sure that's clear. We're not adding to our administration team, right? But we've kind of taken apart a position that can have two different roles. It becomes two different roles. Mm-hmm. And although it's completely supporting our administration and stuff like that, there is a little bit of a difference. I would assume these people are part of some admin meetings and all that kind of stuff, but yet there's also contractually other things going on and license-wise. And so I just wanted to be kind of clear with that, and
sure.
I think it's great that, I look forward to these two different positions in our district. I think it's needed.
Yep. And then, Mr. Sizemore, to your question, again, kind of two separate answers. So the Dean of Students, our teams got together and we really looked at, I would say, the spectrum of what a Dean of Students could be. In the past year, I think a lot of things have been exposed with social emotional health of our students. I always tell our teachers and our staff, COVID both exposes weaknesses and strengths, and I think we're seeing less weaknesses on academics, and we did a great job there, but I think what we're seeing a lot of is some social emotional, some engagement issues, and so we felt the Dean of Students had to have a component of being able to build relationships, being able to build programming, working with students, maybe a history of some sort of advising or coaching would be really, really strong for that person too, giving them kind of a foundation of being able to work and motivate students. But at the same time, the unfortunate part of that position is they also deal with student behaviors, and when our students make maybe poor choices and need to be coached back into making better choices. And one of the things that Matt and I have been working on for the past, I would say 2 years now, is really a restorative approach to student behavior. How when a student makes a mistake, can they learn from it, and we can help them learn from it, bring back something to the community. So we were also looking for candidates who had at least some sort of basis or at least a philosophy in that. Mr. Montreal has, he's brought to his middle school that he's working at right now, they've been working on restorative justice. He's been one of the proponents of that. He takes on a number of different leadership roles in his district. He's a building leader, district leader, sixth grade team leader, and then he's got a history of being a head coach as well. So we felt like the combination of some of those things really dovetailed well with what we need. And then a strong kind of steady personality that our front office and counseling personnel really like, because when you're dealing with a student crisis or a student who's having a tough time, the last thing you want is somebody who's going to maybe respond and elevate the situation. And so we felt like he would be a really good kind of baseline for those situations. Mr. Caudill comes to us with some experience at a high school, actually 2 different high schools, where he's interned as an activities director, and then he's actually currently at the University of Nevada as an assistant activities director, and he has been there for the last 6 years. He's worked with men's and women's tennis and their football program, and been their point person on NCAA compliance for all of their programming. So he's worked in terms of activities and athletics in a lot of different capacities, both on the academic side and on the athletic side. He also serves as a trustee on the Reno, Nevada school board. So he also has seen the academic and educational side of what a school system would look like, and he knows the ins and outs of policy and practice and working with students. So as our teams got together, they felt every single team, both the student teams, the coaches team, and then kind of our mishmash of everybody else, felt like he was probably our strongest candidate, not only to build programs, build relationships, and look at not just athletics, but again, kind of our triple threat of focusing on academics as well with his NCAA history and working with the professors and the educators at Nevada. The arts, because he spoke quite a bit about his experience in the arts when he was in high school, and then obviously the athletic side of things too. He was probably our strongest candidate who balanced those 3 out. And then working with students and sitting down with students, he was one of our virtual candidates, and yet our students came out of his one-on-one and felt the strongest about him. And so he had somehow in a half hour been able to create a relationship, screen to students, which we know is very difficult to do now. And so we had recommended him for a hire as well.
Thank you.
Yep. Maybe that was a much longer answer than you guys
No,
wanted.
that was great.
What was really interesting is you didn't even have any notes on it. That just all came from your head.
Spent a lot of time.
Before you sit down, I had a question about location. Will it both be working out of the office, the high school, or I know like with the activities position, that's across all districts?
Yep.
Kind of preference, yeah.
Yep, so I think we will certainly have a home base for Mr. Caudill. He knows, as we've had some phone conversations, that he's going to be kind of a mover and shaker around the district, and talking with Mr. Igo as well and programming at the middle school. I know one of the things that we've started to have on our dream list is just a really seamless, sequential program, both for clubs, for athletics, that goes from a student's elementary age all the way up through high school, so that someone can really streamline that. And so he's very excited to get started. But yes, he'll be across the district, but definitely have an office at high school.
Perfect, thank you.
Anybody else have any questions for Mr. Figge? All right, thanks, Josh. Anything else? Any other comments? Awesome. All right, I think we're good. Let's take these one at a time. Let's start with the first one, the Dean of Students.
Sure. I'll move to approve the hiring of Rick Montreal for the position of High School Dean of Students.
Second. We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That carries. Activity Director, go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, I'll do this. I apologize if I get the last name,
Caudill.
Caudill. I move to approve the hiring of Andrew Caudill for the position of District Activities Director.
I'll second. We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That carries. And the last one, the 7th grade ELA teacher.
I'll move to approve the hiring of Megan Lisner for the position of Middle School 7th grade ELA teacher.
I will second.
And we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That carries. Well done. Those are some big spots to fill, so well done, you guys. Look forward to meeting them outside of a basketball court.
Oh, if I can ask one question, and maybe you mentioned this, when do they start?
Different times.
Different times, yes. So the activities director, just with the scheduling and the start of fall athletics and groups in early August would start July 1st. The Dean of Students would start in mid to late August.
Okay, thank you.
All right, let's move on. We are on item C, consideration of board resolution relating to the JFC 2021-2023 budget proposal.
Let me just tee it up for you and then share why it's so important. On our screen is a legislative update that comes from the Wisconsin Association of School Boards. In an editorial or a letter to the editor, I had shared at the time that it was $1.3 billion that is currently being left on the table by our legislature down in Madison. We had an update on June 10th that number has now increased to $2.3 billion of taxes that go from the state to the federal government that's part of what they refer to as ESSER dollars. ESSER stands for Elementary Secondary School Emergency Response. Last two key words, emergency response. Our WASB, the mothership for our school board, has provided kind of a model resolution. The reason the timing of this is so important is that anytime the federal funds to a state in the state of Wisconsin differs by more than 5%, it goes in front of the Joint Finance Committee. The Joint Finance Committee currently has made decisions. They are revisiting this question tomorrow morning. If they do not change their current stance in financing for public education, the state of Wisconsin could lose $2.3 billion. These are dollars that have been promised as emergency relief for ESSER 2, of which we would receive $141,000, and for ESSER 3, another $600,000 to address the learning gaps, the learning needs, as well as the recovery for our students. So it's an important financial decision that is faced not just by our district, but also by many districts in the state. And so I have provided to our board the model resolution that was put forward by WASB. We did make some edits to try to either personalize it to Prescott specific, as well as to update the amount to the $2.3 billion that's at stake. And so I'll leave it to the board to kind of discuss of whether or not you're willing to endorse this resolution. And if you do, I would then send it to our representatives in the Joint Finance Committee by tomorrow morning.
Steve, do you want to start on this one?
Yeah, I mean, we brought resolutions like this to the board before. WASB annually does a number of resolutions to be sent to the state legislature in regards to where schools are wanting to direct the legislature for spending or policy or any number of things. I think there's some obvious importance that we show support. My hope, and I think I mentioned this in an email, is that we see this type of action from a lot of districts, because it'll be more, I think, impressive, for lack of a better word, for the legislature. It's not that we're making a decision, but we really have to support our district and our staff and students, and obviously our financial well-being. And this could be a big step, maybe it's a small step, but whatever it is, I think we need to have a stance on supporting the dollars that should be coming in to the state.
Vicki?
Yeah, I see this as an advocacy issue. That's part of our job, is to advocate for these finances for our district. This last year has been a tough year, and we've spent a lot more out of some of our budgets than what we had originally thought we'd need to. So if there's money out there, I think, yeah, the more school districts that can advocate for this, and especially for us to bring it to Prescott, to help our budget and to help our students and our staff in our schools, so that we don't have to make really hard decisions just because money got left on the table.
Thanks. Tanya?
Yeah, and I just wanted to kind of clarify that last therefore there, a lot of this is information, facts, and then the thing that we're asking, which I think is an advocacy piece, is that we're just asking for the lawmakers to relook at that state budget, to think about how it impacts K-12, to take, the above facts into place. And so I think it's very appropriate for us to ask these questions. If I added up the amount of dollars that directly impacts Prescott, it's $700,000 to $800,000 that it impacts us, which is something worth asking for. And it's not just us, right? Like, of course, we're up here advocating for our district, but this is a statewide issue, really, that needs a call to attention. So I think it's great. I like when we get into the advocacy piece. I had a question with one of the whereases, which was, it's like the fourth one down. It says the Wisconsin Legislature Budget Writing Committee chose. Do they do they vote on that?
They do.
Could we change that word chose to voted, not to approve enough? I just think that is probably more accurate. I don't know how anybody else feels about that, but
I feel good about that.
Sure.
solid, thanks guys.
Adding value. Pat?
I'm not going to repeat everything everybody said. I'm in agreement. I'm in agreement with, that's a great comment by Tanya, and the rest of the blue text and cross out, I would also be in favor of.
All right. We need to read this. We as in Steve Sizemore.
I was gonna do it.
Do you want to do it?
No, I'm just kidding.
For a split second, I was happy. Would you like me to propose this now?
If you would.
Whereas in March 2021, Congress provided Wisconsin's K-12 students and schools with the opportunity to receive $2.3 billion in pandemic relief to combat learning disruptions caused by COVID and help pay other pandemic-related expenses. And whereas in order for the state of Wisconsin to qualify to receive that funding for its students and schools, Congress required the state to maintain the same proportion of expenditures for K-12 education that it had provided in previous state budgets. And whereas the state of Wisconsin has money available in its treasury to provide the necessary funding for K-12 education to meet this federal requirement, and whereas the Wisconsin legislature's JFC Budget Committee voted not to approve enough state funding for K-12 education to meet this federal requirement, and whereas the $128 million the Wisconsin Legislature's Budget Writing Committee proposes to spend on K-12 education over the next 2 years is less than half of what the nonpartisan Legislative Fiscal Bureau reports is necessary to secure the federal money. And whereas the proposed level of state funding for K-12 education jeopardizes the federal COVID relief funding that lawmakers and school boards are counting on to fund schools over the next 2 years. And whereas the Wisconsin Legislature's Budget Writing Committee placed $350 million of state dollars into the state's Budget Stabilization Fund, or Rainy Day Fund, to be available to fill future educational funding gaps or any other purpose, thus providing no guarantee that money will be properly appropriated to K-12 schools. And whereas the U.S. Department of Education has warned the state of Wisconsin that placing $350 million into the state's Rainy Day Fund won't help Wisconsin qualify for the $2.3 billion in federal stimulus funds for K-12 education. And whereas the Wisconsin Association of School Boards has been asking WASB members and lawmakers to support 4 state budget priorities: inflationary spending increases, significantly higher special education reimbursement, additional mental health categorical aid, and steps to mitigate pandemic-driven enrollment drops. And whereas the legislature were to rework the proposed state K-12 funding plan and use a portion of the $350 million directed to the Rainy Day Fund to meet these priorities, this potential loss of massive amounts of federal funding for K-12 education in Wisconsin could be avoided. Therefore, the Prescott School Board calls upon lawmakers to rework and pass a state budget bill that provides the state funding for K-12 education necessary to qualify the state of Wisconsin to receive its rightful share of federal COVID relief for K-12 education and properly fund our state's public schools.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That carries. Thank you, Steve, for reading all of that. Take a drink of water.
Thank you to the board for this resolution. I'll make sure it's forwarded by tomorrow morning. Katie, I'm going to have you come forward and speak to the open enrollment. This is an annual, there are 2 periods of time in which families are allowed within Wisconsin to look to either enroll in a public school that is outside of their boundaries or to leave the Prescott boundaries and go to another district. So Katie will give us an update on that.
Yep,
So going into the 21-22 academic year, we have 13 requests at this point of students that are requesting to transfer into the district. And we have 22 students that are requesting out. 3 of those students that are requesting to leave the district were never officially enrolled, meaning that they are pre-K or going into 4K and looking to other areas to do that. And then there's an additional 3 students that are requesting to transfer out of the district that we have no record of being students previously enrolled in the district.
Tanya, you have any questions on this?
I'm going to use a previous board member's favorite word, which is delta. And I just want to say that the delta here is a -9 with our students, right? So we're losing 9 students, but when we look at the previous couple years, it was a -15 and -23. So we had quite I would say a gain in keeping our kids, having more kids come into our district since, well, it was 2014-15. So that just tells me that we're doing good things here, and I hope to continue to see that pattern, kind of the delta decrease in between those two. So it's awesome to see. I wish those 22 would stay with us, but I know that every family has their reasons, and we respect that. So that 13 is awesome, though.
Yeah, and in looking at that data as well in terms of people that are choosing to leave, there isn't any, sort of glaring thing. You can sort of see some might be sports related of, things that we may not offer in our district. So I agree with that as well. And then today, and this isn't related necessarily to these numbers, but we are seeing that there are other students that are returning that may have last year chosen to not be in the district based upon some homeschooling or decisions made due to COVID. So I just saw a couple of those that came through today. And, at our next meeting, if you guys want, I can, provide additional information in terms of those other students that may be coming back in.
And that doesn't really, because these are our kids that were not in our boundaries, is that right?
In terms of?
This 13.
Correct.
So those wouldn't impact this overall number that are coming, because they would be in our district. Awesome. So I just wanted to make sure it's not an inflated number.
Two separate.
This is our
Yep.
plus 13 here, which is awesome.
Yep, absolutely.
So, yeah, great.
Pat?
No questions.
Steve?
Nothing additional, thank you.
Vicky?
No, but I am interested to know, I guess if we can put something together as we go along, if we know we have students coming back because of opting out for COVID last year, that would be nice to hear some helpful information.
Yeah, for sure.
To add to it.
Absolutely. Yep.
Thanks, Katie.
Yep.
Let's entertain a motion.
I move to approve 22 students applying to open enroll out of the Prescott School District for the 2021-22 academic year, and approve 13 applicants applying to open enroll into the Prescott School District for the 2021-22 academic year.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That carries. Item E, PHS, Start College Now and Early College Credit Program.
Mr. Figge, I'm going to have you come up. The next 2 items are going to be presented by Mr. Figge. And the first one is an annual update with regards to impacting students in the fall.
I feel like we do this every 3 months. So. By now, I know you guys are experts on Start College Now and early college credit. So there are 2 main enrollment periods for this, although there are some offshoot periods for our students who are taking courses through ITV. A lot of people don't know that at the high school level we have ITV courses that allow our students to, via video, beam in to other districts and in some cases other colleges across Wisconsin and offer some of the things that we're not able to offer. In terms of this go-round, we are very heavy on our Start College Now applicants, and it is one of our ITV courses. We're trying to offer an Intro to Psychology course next year to our students, and we had 12 students who expressed interest in this. This is a little bit different. We do have a human development course at the high school that does deal with aspects of psychology. This one deals with personal psychology for students, goes deeper than what our current curriculum has, and offers students 3 credits of post-secondary credit. So it's a little bit different than what we currently have on our high school docket. We did have 12 students who signed up for the class, and if you look at the matrix up above, you can see that Start College Now is facilitated through a 2-year technical school, and that the school district's responsible for all fees for the course as well as any books. So for this course, it would be a total for each student $458 for a total cost of Start College Now at about $5,500 for the year. We are also looking at the last 2 students, knock on wood, should be, for early college credit enrollment. And again, these are virtually done. So we have an ITV Intro to Teaching, a student who wants to take 3 credits through that program. Unlike Start College Now, this does have some reimbursement from the state, and it does have some differential in tuition costs. So while Start College Now doesn't offer any reduction in